The sadness, the pain, the facts coming to light.
We have been able to confirm the identity of the gunman at Norris Hall. That person is Cho Song-Hui.
At 9:45, the Virginia Tech Police received a 911 call of a shooting at Norris Hall.
He just opened the door pretty quickly and immediately started shooting.
I hid under the desk, and then he proceeded to shoot everybody else in our class, practically.
Meanwhile, all these gunshots are going on. He eventually came to our door, tried to open the door, didn't go, so he tried to shoulder his way in.
It just seems like his intent to kill is just irrational.
A campus and nation begin to mourn.
We have lost the sense of peace that comes with learning.
Those whose lives were taken did nothing to deserve their fate. They were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time.
We're just learning who they are. We're learning how it happened. But will we ever know why?
Some answers are starting to surface about the deadly rampage here at Virginia Tech. On a day of mourning on this campus, the killer was identified as one of their own, a student here. We also now know the names of many of those who were killed, and we're hearing more gripping accounts from the survivors. Justice correspondent Bob Orr is looking into the #1 question: just who was the shooter, and what was his path to destruction?
He was a lone gunman with few friends and no known criminal record. Police say a 23-year-old South Korean-born student named Cho Sung-Hoi acted alone, shooting and killing 32 teachers and students before turning the gun on himself. Cho, a senior English major at Virginia Tech, began his deadly day without warning at the West Ambler Johnston Hall. There, inside a dorm room, he point-blank shot and killed a man and a woman. Sources say Cho then quietly returned to his own dorm, Harper Hall, just a few hundred feet away. And it was there Cho left behind his only explanation for the horror that was about to play out. Hours after the rampage, sources say, investigators found a rambling but threatening note in which Cho seemed to blame others for his perceived problems, charging that, "You made me do this." This, as it turned out, would be wholesale slaughter. Investigators say after stopping at his dorm, Cho then traveled a half-mile across campus, chained closed the doors at Norris Hall, and began methodically working his way through 4 classrooms, shooting students and teachers at will. Many have multiple gunshot wounds, a clear sign that Cho reloaded perhaps more than once before his rage ended in suicide. Karan Grewal, who was a suite mate of Cho's, said he saw him just 2 hours before the first shootings occurred.
I went to the bathroom at 5 o'clock. He came in. I saw him. Looked normal as usual, no expression on his face. Didn't seem angry or, sad or anything. Just a normal look on his face.
Grewal said Cho barely spoke to his own roommates.
I was just shocked. He did not seem like a guy who could do, what happened. Didn't seem like a guy who had a death wish. Or I never saw him angry or throwing anything around or, looking sad or anything. So I figured he was just, shy.
Another student, who also lives in Harper Hall, says she and her friends were just lucky not to be in the line of fire.
They're just shocked that it could have happened and that somebody so close did something, because he could have come back here in between the shootings even. And it seems like we dodged a bullet there.
Cho, a loner in life, apparently wanted to be anonymous in death. Sources say he carried no identification on him during his killing spree, and the serial numbers on the 2 handguns he used had been erased. But investigators tell CBS News paperwork in Cho's backpack allowed them to trace one of his guns, a 9mm Glock like this one, to a recent purchase at this Roanoke gun store. Police last night carried out a search of Cho's dorm room and removed letters, papers, and other personal items. Authorities also searched Cho's home in Northern Virginia. His neighbors, like his dorm mates, were stunned to learn that a young man in their midst was behind the Virginia Tech massacre.
I would never have thought that we would have something like that originating here on this town and this street. This is really shocking.
There were some troubling signs with Cho. Students in his writing classes say he often wrote violent scenes they describe as twisted. He wrote 2 screenplays dealing with death and revenge, 2 things that seem to have played out here on the Virginia Tech campus. But police say they still have no clear motive for the killings. Until the shootings, Cho's only known run-ins with the law were 2 speeding tickets he picked up in the past 3 weeks. Authorities say they're hard-pressed to explain how a man with no known criminal past took such an immediate and violent turn.
What about the guns used in the rampage? With so many victims having multiple wounds, Aaron Moriarty has been tracing the weapons, including how the killer got them. As it turns out, it was all legal.
When you see a 9mm pistol in action, you begin to understand how one man could kill so many innocent people in a short time.
When you go into a classroom and how many kids there were there, this is like shooting fish in a barrel, and they're at your mercy.
News that a weapon just like this was used in the Virginia Tech rampage comes as no surprise to Armando Fontoura, sheriff of Essex County, New Jersey. It's easily obtained in states like Virginia, where Cho Sung-hui purchased one last month.
We turn down gun sales every day, literally. So there's so many sales we have turned down just to err on the side of caution. But this just looked like a clean-cut young man.
John Markell owns Roanoke Firearms, a gun shop a little over 30 miles from the Virginia Tech campus.
He was not nervous at all in purchasing the gun. He knew what he was doing. He'd had some knowledge of the gun. So just a typical sale. Wasn't anything out of the ordinary.
After showing government-issued photo IDs to prove his Virginia residency, Cho Sung-hui charged $571 on a credit card and walked out of Roanoke Firearms with a new 9mm Glock 19 and 50 rounds of ammunition.
If we see a resident alien with a credit card, it's a good indication that they're a good, upstanding member. I mean, it's not somebody that you'd expect to go on a shooting spree.
And Markell says an instant background check showed nothing.
It went right straight through. We did the state police check with the federal computers. He came back clean.
9mm today is the weapon of choice.
The 9mm, says Sheriff Fontoura, is easily concealed, easy to use, and has been romanticized in popular culture.
Have you been to a movie lately? I'm sure that when you see the gunfire, most likely it's a 9mm.
The Matrix is just one example. The 9mm also has a starring role in video games and music.
It's a sexy weapon. It just looks good. Looks good. And our young people are obviously, are enjoying that, and they're learning from that.
It may help to explain why so many mass shootings involve a 9mm weapon. Both of the Columbine shooters were armed with one.
But it's not just the gun that can turn a shooter into a mass killer. It's also the size of the magazine or the clip containing the ammunition that can allow the shooter to fire numerous times without having to reload.
Now, when the clip comes in, you just kick it out, grab another one, kick it in, and you're ready to go again. If you're really good at it, you could do it in a matter of seconds.
Cho was able to fire 15 rounds at a time. He was also armed with a .22 caliber semi-automatic handgun like this that shoots 10 rounds at a time. He reportedly bought it last week, which would make it a legal sale in a state that allows one gun purchase a month.
Obviously, he'd had plenty of practice because he would have had to change magazines quite frequently. So he must have had at least half a dozen magazines with him.
The massacre of 32 people yesterday is likely to reignite an old debate.
I see no reason to blame the gun. The fault goes squarely on Mr. Cho. No one else, nothing else. And if he didn't have that Glock, he would have used something else.
These are instruments of death. That's what they are. Guns are instruments of death. They're not for any other purpose. We need to remember that.
In the midst of all the death that rained down on Virginia Tech this week, there were some who, even though they were shot, turned out to be the lucky ones.
She's 19 years old, very, very young, just a smart girl, has a whole lot of life to live, and we were just, very scared for her, but, she persevered.
Patrick Strollo, a senior here at Virginia Tech, is talking about his sister Hillary, a freshman. What did she say about what happened? Did she talk about it?
She just said it was, it was terrifying. Blood everywhere, lots of bullets, and she was just trying to pretend that she was dead. She just dove against the wall and got into the fetal position.
Hillary was shot 3 times by the man police say was the gunman, Cho Sung-hui.
Went into the left side of her stomach. She has one 9mm bullet in her buttocks, and she had one bullet that grazed the top of her head. She had, from the grazed bullet that hit her head, she had blood running down her face, so she thinks that he thought she was dead and didn't fire again.
The gunman did come back for many others and may have killed even more if one brave 76-year-old man had not gotten in his way.
I really felt a sense of pride, even though I wasn't surprised as to how he acted at those moments.
Joe Labrescu is the son of Liviu Labrescu, an engineering professor, Holocaust survivor, and grandfather.
I think he definitely lived a very fulfilled life.
The professor died. Maxine Turner worked for her taekwondo club. Jarrett Lane liked Christian alternative music and The Simpsons. Emily Hilscher loved animals. She even worked in a vet's office.
Yeah, whatever I do in life, I'm proud of you.
Sophomore Matt Laporte, seen here speaking at his military school graduation, was tough enough to be drum corps commander, yet played the cello beautifully.
To know that right next door, your neighbor's son was murdered.
Relatives describe 19-year-old Mary Reed as someone who seemed to burst with life.
She was our family princess. She was the first grandchild, and watching her grow into such a beautiful young woman has been just amazing.
Injured students continue to recover at area hospitals. Some of their families spoke publicly for the first time. Caitlin Carney's mom, Susan, says her daughter plans to attend her sister's wedding this weekend, despite her injured hand.
All the guests are going to wear a white glove on their left hand, so, she won't look out of place.
And it's that spirit people here say will live on, in memory of all that was lost.
Working here, and then suddenly I heard bang, 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 gunshots outside.
Dennis Hong, assistant professor of robotics and engineering, was in his office when the shooting started.
And I freaked out, came in, locked the door, and then from this window I opened up, and I peeked that way, and you can actually see Norris Hall from here. And I saw a bunch of police officers running around with their guns, and it was a very, very chaotic scene.
He dove under the desk and hunkered down in his office for the next 6 hours. He feared for the safety of his students. While Dr. Hong was locked in his office upstairs, his students were down here in the basement, in the laboratory. No windows, no cell phone service, and no clear picture of what was going on outside.
I used one of these small cameras, webcams, which has a magnet, and I just clicked it outside my window.
Hong took a webcam and pointed it towards Norris Hall. That gave his engineering students a high-tech live video feed of what was happening right outside their building.
So you can see some students running away, or it could be police officers, a little bit difficult to see.
Mm-hmm. Everybody's got their guns out, though.
Yep. It was very, very tense.
And you said you could hear gunshots as you had the camera, the webcam out the window?
That is correct.
Later, police brought him to the station, hoping he could identify the shooter. He was shocked by the crime scene photos.
Well, I don't want to describe it. It was so horrific. I'd never seen something that bad in my life.
He did not recognize the shooter. He was worried about the identity of the victims.
I'm just terrified if I see one of the students that I know of or taught. I don't think I'll be able to handle it.
Today, Hong returned to the lab with 2 students who had been trapped inside.
He told us just to stay in our lab, lock the doors. We didn't want to go out.
Basically, he was your link to the outside world.
That's right. He did give us a link to the immediate outside world. We also we're browsing the internet a lot, but we only get brief headlines that weren't very specific.
It seemed surreal. Yesterday, this was their refuge from the horror they could see outside. Normally, it's their place to tinker with the next generation of robots.
Good.
Hong is proud of his students and of his school.
All my colleagues say it's a wonderful place to raise a family.
He's lived in this usually serene community for 4 years.
Blacksburg is such a wonderful, beautiful town, probably the lowest crime rates in the nation. And something like this happening, I never, ever imagined that would happen.
His wife, named So Young, also works on campus. At first, she could not reach her husband and feared the worst.
When he contacted me by sending an email, then it was a huge relief because I was really, really worried.
They are both safe, but reality is slowly sinking in. Hong now knows he lost 2 colleagues in the shooting. One was a good friend.
And we're just starting to do a collaboration work together. We actually started a walking robot competition. So we decided to have a Virginia Tech competition where the students build walking robots and have a competition, which would have been really, really nice. But, well, yeah, it's very, very difficult for me.
When he learns the identity of the shooter...
So this is the official news release that just announced right now.
It also hits home.
It turns out that he's a Korean or a Korean-American student. And as I mentioned, me being Korean-American, it's quite shocking.
You look a little disturbed by the news.
I am.
Yeah. But like many of the people in the Virginia Tech community, he believes that this incident, no matter how tragic, will not define the future.
Can the school pull it back together? Can the school continue? Can it go on?
I believe so. The Hokie spirit, Virginia Tech, I'm sure that we can pull off, rise again from this very difficult time.
There's a theory that this shooting may have been triggered by a situation with a girlfriend or an ex-girlfriend. Do most of these attackers have some sort of trigger that sets them off, or are they just random acts of violence?
You know, Maureen, they're not random acts of violence.
After the Columbine massacre 8 years ago, Marisa Randazzo, then a research psychologist with the Secret Service, joined a groundbreaking investigation into the cause of the rising number of school shootings in the United States.
There's usually some precipitating, the loss of a girlfriend. In other cases, it might be a loss of status, like a public humiliation in school that comes from bullying. The important point is that for the shooter, for the attacker, it feels like a major loss and something that they can't overcome.
Randazzo says all of the 41 shooters they studied had suicidal thoughts before carrying out their attacks.
As we see it, there really is just a fine line between suicide and homicide. They actually may feel, okay, I'm despondent, but who's to blame for this? Why am I feeling such despair? And they may realize, okay, it's because of this teacher, because of that student, because I was bullied in school, I lost this relationship, and okay, I'm gonna take some people out before I actually kill myself.
In November of 1985, after years of being bullied, then 17-year-old Jamie Rouse walked into his Linville, Tennessee high school looking for revenge.
I guess I blamed school for my problems. That's where I had my most misery. I guess I blamed the teachers. I was just so filled with, hate and anger and this evil that, I guess in a way I felt that, they should be punished too.
But what happened next was surprisingly typical of most school shootings. After Rouse shot his first victim, the killing continued.
When you're in that state of mind where you're going to kill someone, nothing matters. I wasn't expecting to come back alive.
That is exactly what happened in 1997 in Pearl, Mississippi, where 16-year-old Luke Woodham killed his ex-girlfriend and her best friend.
He shot them both as soon as he got into school, but then he started walking up and down the hall, shooting at a number of other students.
Why'd you do it, Luke?
In 1998, Kip Kinkle killed both his parents and then continued his shooting rampage at his Oregon high school. And in the deadliest school shooting ever, until yesterday's incident, Charles Whitman killed his mother and wife before ending the lives of another 14 victims at the University of Texas. Not only are many of these school shootings planned well in advance, Randazzo says the killers often confess their plans before committing the crime.
These are people who usually tell other kids what they're planning to do.
Jamie Rouse, who is now serving a life sentence, told 5 of his friends. And in fact, one of them drove him, with gun in hand, to Richland High School that day.
I remember him making a comment like, "So you're really going to do it, aren't you?"
Information is out there before a school shooting occurs. Now, the challenge for schools is to figure out how to encourage students who are going to be the ones most likely to have that information. How do you encourage them to come forward and share that information with an adult?
Even though adults may not hear of the murder plans in advance, Randazzo says many are witnessing the danger signs. Her study found that in the vast majority of these shootings, at least 3 adults had witnessed suspicious behavior by the students, but did nothing about it.
The kids in Columbine, for example, had been on the radar screen of law enforcement for having a very threatening website that they had posted well a year at least in advance of the Columbine incident.
Since the Columbine killings, Randazzo says adults have become more aware.
One of the things that we've seen elementary and high schools do really well, especially in the wake of Columbine, is they've taken a very proactive approach to investigate rumors and really address concerning behavior among their students.
In one success story, the staff at one high school trained its faculty to spend just a few minutes each day chatting with their students.
They started to get back a wealth of information about things going on in their student body they had no idea was occurring. They heard about drug use. They heard about who had brought weapons to school, who was getting beat up at recess. They started to learn so much more just because they were stopping students and asking how they were doing.
Across the country, authorities have seen improved communications pay off. And since Columbine, more than a dozen school shootings have been thwarted while still in the planning stages. But all preventative measures aside, Randazzo says, in the end, America may be its own worst enemy.
What I really see as the distinguishing factor is that in this country, compared to other countries around the globe, it is very, very easy to get access to weapons. In other countries, they have the same dynamics, so you see kids getting into fistfights, into knife fights. They may kill themselves, but we don't see the magnitude of destruction that we have seen in this country, and certainly that we saw yesterday at Virginia Tech.
Like many of history's most tragic days, April 16th began so normally it bordered on bland.
It was a challenge just trying to get to work this morning.
I was just going to say, it's like a video game. Have to go around.
The biggest story of the day was supposed to be the weather.
As a nor'easter dumps heavy rain and high winds in its path.
But a storm of a different kind was brewing in the head of a 23-year-old English major named Jo Sung-wee. And on this day, the world would run on his schedule.
I didn't know yesterday was going to be the day that my school had the worst killing in U.S. history.
7 a.m. at the West Ambler Johnston dormitory, home to Eddie Logan and more than 800 other students, the card key entry system shuts off every morning.
What do you think of that?
Why not keep it in place for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week?
Security expert Michael McCann.
If you have that in place, now you have a record of who's gone into the building at the very least, possibly who's come out of the building. So you have a tool to assist you with the investigation if something like this happens.
Joe lives in nearby Harper Hall. Shortly after 7, evidence suggests that he enters Ambler Johnston, heads to the 4th floor, and kills freshman Emily Hitchner in her room.
When we didn't know what was going on, we weren't taking it seriously enough.
Seconds later, residential assistant Ryan Clark is murdered as he reportedly rushes to help. At 7:15, someone calls 911. Within minutes, campus police arrive at the dorm, assess the scene, and make a crucial decision.
We concluded first that the incident in the Ambler Johnson was domestic in nature. In fact, we had some reason to think the shooter had left the campus, in fact, may have been leaving the state.
Students at the dorm are told to stay inside.
We found out someone got killed. That's when we, it was like, all right, maybe we should stay in our rooms. We should relax and chill out for a while.
But elsewhere on campus, the school day proceeds uninterrupted. No general alarm is sounded, no evacuation is ordered, no warnings are broadcast.
Got up and went around my normal day, and just in the morning, get ready to go to class and so on. I hadn't heard anything at all.
Nick Macco heads to his morning math class in the engineering building, Norris Hall. How soon should word have gone out to the student body, to the community?
The information should go out as soon as possible. And it's very difficult to pinpoint the time, but at least within the first half hour, preferably in the first 15 to 20 minutes, to get the information out to the people that are involved, the people that are on the campus.
At 9:26, more than 2 hours after the dormitory shooting, the university sent out its first email, a tame announcement urging students to be cautious. The initial email that went out more than 2 hours after this incident did not mention that 2 students had been killed. Is that wrong?
That's probably appropriate because you may not want to give all the facts out of exactly what happened to create more hysteria and to disrupt things more than necessary.
As sources told CBS News, Joe returned to his room to scribble his bitter farewell note. Meanwhile, police had detained a person of interest in the first shooting.
He was stopped in his vehicle off campus and detained for questioning. As officers were interviewing him, the shootings at Norris Hall were reported.
Shortly before 9:45, while police are dealing with that man, Joe is presumed to have entered Norris Hall and changed some of the doors shut to seal his victims inside.
We heard a series of just loud bangs outside the classroom. There's this realization comes over the class that, yes, they're gunshots, not something more benign.
The bloodbath commences with systematic efficiency. Joe moves from classroom to classroom, pumping bullets into teachers and students, pausing only to reload. Derek Odell is taking a German class in room 207. Joe enters, shoots instructor Christopher Bishop in the head, and moves on to the rest of the class.
There were probably 15 to 20 people in our class, and he shot maybe 10 to 15 of them.
In another classroom, an act of heroism, as Zach Pelkowitz thinks quick and helps save his fellow students.
I said we need to barricade this door. 2 of my classmates got up and helped me, and we just held the table there. He eventually came to our door, tried to open the door, didn't go, so he tried to shoulder his way in, got the door open about 6 inches, and we all had to slam it back shut on him.
At 9:45, Nick calls 911. 5 minutes later, the university sends out another email. A gunman is loose on campus. Stay in buildings until further notice. Police cut through the chain doors and enter Norris Hall. The shooting has subsided. Joe saved his last bullet for himself.
Along with the shock that overwhelmed the campus of Virginia Tech today, remarkable stories have emerged of courage in the moment and courage in the tragedy's aftermath. I heard both.
We heard the first few gunshots, didn't quite register what it was. Then we initially heard a girl scream, and 2 of the girls in my class looked out the hall and saw a guy coming out into the hallway with a gun pointed down to the ground.
Zach Pelkowitz and his classmates were in Norris Hall Monday, and they are alive today in no small measure because of his bravery.
So I said we need to barricade this door. Two of my classmates got up and helped me, and we just held a table there. He eventually came to our door, tried to open the door, didn't go, so he tried to shoulder his way in. Got the door open about 6 inches, and we all had to slam it back shut on him. And that's when he put 2 bullets into the center of the door, thinking we were up against it, trying to close him out. And he then reloaded. I was right against the ground, right against the door. He reloaded his clip, and I thought he was coming in for a second round. But for the grace of God, he just kept going and didn't try to get back in there.
How many kids were in the classroom?
There's 11, including me.
You're one lucky guy to be alive, and the folks who were in that classroom have you and your friends to thank for thinking fast on your feet. Thanks for taking the time to just speak with us. Take care of yourself, all right?
Omar Samaha is mourning the death of his younger sister, Rima, a freshman from Centerville, Virginia. A friend saw her name on a list of the dead.
He told my dad, and I was sitting there next to him, and my mom and my sister, when they came back in, they could just tell by our body language and our faces that she was dead.
You went to school here.
I did.
You loved it here.
I did.
Your sister followed you here.
Yeah.
Is there a way to describe her? What kind of girl she was?
Completely unique in every way. She was a girl of like high moral standards, and she just kept going and just excelled in everything. I mean, I looked up to her because of her standards and her values.
What went through your mind when you heard who the shooter was?
I didn't really care. I didn't care who it was. Just the fact that it happened to her and to so many other people, I just didn't care who it was. I still don't. I want people to know about it. I never wish this on anyone. I never want it to happen again. And I don't think it's going to sink in for a while. I need to heal. I don't want to feel pain anymore that I feel. It's just indescribable. I want it to go away. I just wish it never happened.
We have come together today to remember the cherished and innocent members of the Virginia Tech family whose lives were so abruptly ended in the senseless act that has left us all reeling in excruciating grief.
Thousands of Virginia Tech students gathered today, both inside and outside Castle Coliseum, forming a giant circle of grief.
We collectively pay tribute to these young, gifted minds who came to Virginia Tech searching for knowledge and understanding.
The mourners came searching too, trying to make sense out of something completely senseless.
We've come to express our sympathy.
Those who were there were at least comforted by the knowledge that in their grief, their community had grown to include the entire country.
In this time of anguish, I hope you know that people all over this country are thinking about you.
During the service today, a man behind you, President Bush, collapsed.
Yeah. He and his wife had lost their only daughter. And at one point I heard some rustling and turned around, and he had gone completely gray. And fortunately, though, it was just a temporary pass out, and then we saw him later, and spirits were somewhat revived, but nothing's going to heal his heart.
You just met with some of the families. How was that meeting? How were you able to offer some comfort?
I cried when they wanted to cry. I hugged when they wanted to hug. These people were in shock.
2 families that I met lost their only child. And the idea of that for any parent is so devastating. It's hard for us to even imagine what they're going through.
Is it too easy, in your view, for unstable people to purchase guns in this country?
On the gun control debate, and there's inevitably going to be a debate, as there should be after an incident like this, I think now, my own view is that I haven't had time to reflect, nor do I know all the facts on what took place. I do know now's the time to help heal these hearts.
We are Virginia Tech. We are sad today.
Then, on a day with so few answers, hometown poet and professor Nikki Giovanni seemed to find at least one.
We are Virginia Tech, the Hokie Nation.
Striking an odd, though somehow appropriate chord of defiance that lightened the community's sorrow, if only for a moment.
Through our blood and tears, through all this sadness, we are the Hokies. We will prevail. We will prevail. We will prevail. We are Virginia Tech.
Have lost not just these dear members of our Virginia Tech community. We have lost the sense of peace that comes with learning. We will eventually recover, but we will never, ever forget.
I stand here to tell you that we are all in pain. All of us here, the children of Adam and Eve, we all unite in pain, and we are all hurt.
Every person lost was irreplaceable and immensely precious. A much-loved sister, father, son, teacher, and friend. In the most terrible manner imaginable, we have been reminded of the immense value of human life.
Let us draw strength from one another to move from a time of violence and sorrow to a time of healing and peace. The memory of the righteous will be a blessing.
They are gone forever. And yet we come to this place to testify that the light of love cannot be defeated. Let us cast our lot with hope in defiance of despair.
This is a day of mourning for the Virginia Tech community, and it is a day of sadness for our entire nation. I ask you to reach out to those who ache for sons and daughters who will never come home. May God bless and keep the souls of the lost. And may His love touch all those who suffer in grief.
Through our blood and tears, through all this sadness, we are the Hokies. We will prevail. We will prevail. We will prevail. We are Virginia Tech.